Black people are the most racist people you've ever seen in all your days. If you know a black person, he or she is a hardcore racist. Not a little bit of racist, not a partial racist, sometime part-time. If you know a black person, they are racist. And by racist, I mean they are filled with hatred for God, hatred for the fidelity of his word, and they have no production in humanity. Black people are the most racist people on the entire earth. Nearly 96% of black people voted for Barack Hussein Obama, not because of his character, because they knew he was a baby killer. They knew it. They knew he believed in infanticide. They knew it before they voted for him. They knew he was a Muslim before they voted. Christians, dolly wearers, tongue talkers, talking in tongues. They knew he was a Muslim. They know that Muslims and Islam stands over against Jesus. The man has a Muslim name. We're not talking about Mahalia Jackson's son. We're not talking about Dr. King's, Coretta Scott King's son. We're not talking about Shirley Chisholm's son. We're not talking about Nancy Wilson's son. We voted for him anyway because he was black. He's black, Pastor Manny, and we black races have got to stick together. Church mother said to me, because they weren't judging by the character, they were judging because they are racist black people. They are racist. The black presence before God is like the lie before God. You can't tell the difference between Satan's use of a lie on humanity than Satan's use of black racism on humanity. They're both the same. God sent me here to preach this morning, and I'm going to preach it. Black people receive 95%, or if a black society had a GDP, a gross domestic product, whereby they evaluated mathematically, systematically, where all of their income flowed from and all of its derivatives that flowed into the life of black people, you would discover that 95% of the income that flows into black people comes from racism. Affirmative action, food stamps, the Great Society, laws, equality laws, all racism. You can say they're good for humanity if you want, but it's racism. It's what it is. Bus drivers, racism. These jobs that black people do are given to them because you remember Rosa Parks not only could not drive a bus, but she couldn't ride in front of the bus. So little racism have gotten black people bus driver jobs. Post office, go in the post office. You think you'd fall into a tar pit, it's so black in there. Racism. Racism. And racism not only as a result of how they got the jobs, but racism meaning that's all they qualify to do. They don't have engineering skills. They don't have technical skills. They don't have administrative ability skills. So they have to get a job with security where all they have to do primarily is just kind of show up and keep breathing and they can get a paycheck. Racism. Racism. Because they don't have the potential to compete with Japanese in technology. They don't have the potential to compete in other workplaces. Racism. That's where they get their money from. School teachers, same thing. Police officers, same thing. Government workers, same thing. And then all these people get Section 8 housing. Racism again. 95% of the gross domestic product that flows into the life of every black person you know comes as a result. In other words, black people without racism would be dirt poor. If they didn't have racism, they wouldn't have any money. That's how they get their money. Racism is a money tree. Don't you see how rich Al Sharpton is? Don't you see how rich Jesse Jackson is? He's a racist leader. That's where black people get their money from. Racism. Without it, they'd have no money, no skills. But black people have not always been racist. They haven't. The era of the civil rights, we can mark that period from 1954 if we like, until present, if you want to call that, and that is an era, it is a period where racism was birthed, it has grown, it has seized. It is now one of Satan's greatest weapons in the earth today, black people. They are racist. But the Reconstruction period, my friends, was a time when blacks built. We're talking about from 1865 rather, up until the industrial age and even through that period when Jim Crow started in the 1920s. But from 1865 to the 1920s, black people built banks, they became prosperous, they became millionaires. We had more millionaires right after slavery than we do now. Oprah Winfrey and Robert Johnson, all that crowd of liars and racist thieves are nothing compared to the number of black millionaires who, and even to this very day, there's still black people from East Texas to Maryland, right up to Pennsylvania, who still own land from slavery. They can trace it all the way back to the time of Reconstruction. They didn't get the 40 acres of the mule, but through their own abilities, after watching the master, they own hundreds, if not thousands of acres of land, and little by little it dwindled down, but they passed that land on to their children and their grandchildren, and they're living on it today. That's Reconstruction. That wasn't civil rights. Before racism, before civil rights. And they own that land even until today. Businesses. When I first came to this community, everywhere you looked, there was a black business. Everywhere you looked, there was a black store. There was one right up the street up here. All the businesses were owned by black people. When I first came to Harlem, it was a black community. Out of Reconstruction, out of Jim Crow, here comes civil rights and racism, and black people said, we don't have to be store owners anymore. We can be racist and shake down the government. And our shakedown artist is Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and the NAACP. We don't have to own business anymore. We don't have to own stores anymore. We don't even have to go to church anymore. We can be racist. Racist. You work with black people now? Try to hire them, right? Give them a job. You white. First time you tell them, listen, pick this up and do care of that. You're racist. I'm going to tell Jesse Jackson. I'm going to tell Al Sharpton, and he's going to march on you. Racism. If you know a black person today, he's a racist. Not just a part-time one. Not just a semi one. Not one when they're away from the church. He's a racist through and through. If you know if he's black, he's racist.